Hello, everyone, and welcome to Practical Inclusion. I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which I broadcast from today, which is the land of the Wadawurrung people, and pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging. And my guest today, Rezza, whose lands do you broadcast in from?
Hi, Bree. I'm proudly staying at the Wurundjeri land, and I also would like to pay my respect to Wurundjeri people, the elders past, present, and emerging, who share their stories, food, medicine, and everything with us for such a long time.
Thanks for that. That's beautiful acknowledgement. I am really excited that we're going to have this chat today. So for those, I'm going to paint the picture. Yesterday, I was sitting at my desk thinking that I had severely neglected my LinkedIn lives in terms of recruiting guests for the next few weeks. And now I sit here with just an incredible array of guests that are going to show up over the next 4 weeks, starting with Rezza, who we only just started having a chat about an hour ago. And he's so kindly agreed to come on and continue that conversation live, because I'm very excited about this. We're talking data, and all of you know that is absolutely my core passion when it comes to diversity and inclusion is collecting the right data so that your strategies and your actions are actually informed and therefore can have the biggest impact that you would want from them. So this is right up my alley, and I have found that I've got an absolute friend here who also totally believes in the power of data. So for those watching live or on the replay, please feel free as always to place some comments or to ask any questions. We're happy to stop and answer them. But what I'm going to do first, Rezza, is really get you to introduce yourself as I do usually on this show, and tell us a bit about your story. How did you become a data whiz when it comes to diversity and inclusion?
Do I have like 3 hours of time?
Yeah, go for it. We're here all day.
Sure. So my name is Rezza Moieni. So I'm a Persian background. In my culture, my first name Rezza means someone who's happy, and my last name Moieni means someone who helps others. So my mates at the office usually call me Happy Helper. And that's how I usually wrap up my work. And interestingly, this week is the Persian New Year as well, and that's the day of equinox, where day and night are exactly the same. So it means equality. And in the last 4,000 years, we've been celebrating that as a secular event between Zoroastrians, Persians, and many different ethno-linguistic background people across the world, from West Asia to Balkans. So so I joined Cultural Infusion about 6 years ago as the project manager here. So I come from a technical background. I have a degree as electronic engineer and also another degree as a computer scientist. And I joined Cultural Infusion. This company has a long history of 20 years working in this space. From running like Australia Day concerts and events to have like inclusion and schools program across all Australia. And I was hearing all these beautiful words of diversity, harmony, equality, mutuality, intercultural understanding. And I mean, these words resonate with anyone. I mean, who doesn't feel like good when hearing about like harmony? And as an engineer, I asked myself, okay, so these people are talking about all these beautiful things, but how it actually looks like? I mean, sorry, I'm dumb. I understand numbers. Can you describe diversity and these concepts with a number? And I went to Peter Musafir, this our CEO, and I said, okay, Peter, I mean, can you tell me how diversity actually looks like? Are we more or less diverse compared to last year? And then it was a moment of silence between us, and said, that's a good question. I'm not too sure. And then here we are after 6 years working in the field of adding insights into the field of diversity and inclusion, because this area was always analytically neglected. It was a blurry space, and we try to put a robust understanding around diversity and inclusion.
Beautiful. And I totally relate to that idea of coming with a data background and looking at this space and going, hang on, there's more that we should be doing here to really measure and track our success and be able to actually work out whether we are having success or not, which, is just absolutely a shared experience. Now we're having a little bit of trouble with the technology. So we don't seem to be on LinkedIn at the moment. So I'm just going to press a few buttons here and load us back up and see if that works for us. And then I'll roll into my next question. So hopefully now we're back live on LinkedIn. So I'm really interested. We had some chats about collecting data around ethnicity. And I think this is something that, well, I know that this is something that proves to be the most difficult for organisations when it comes to providing data to inform their plans, is how do we collect data around ethnicity? Is it okay to ask people those types of questions? What type of questions would we ask them? And how do we, how do we provide confidence to our employees and potential employees that it's okay for them to answer our questions around ethnicity? And I'm really interested in your take. So I've made that a huge overarching question, but maybe just at the first point, why do you think Australians aren't familiar with collecting data around ethnicity? What do you think are the main barriers to that?
Wow, so how to answer that? I mean, the first thing is, what do we mean by data? What do we mean by diversity? And then how are we going to collect that? How are we going to measure that? So the definition of the diversity is the first step. In some countries, they collect information around ethnic background, countries of birth, linguistic backgrounds, gender, age, etc., etc. In some countries, they don't. And even those different countries who collect the same data, they do not collect that in a standard way. So let me give some examples. Like in Australia, when we do the census, we do not collect any information about people's ethnic backgrounds. And I mean, that's really important. We did about 350 different literatures and found that when you talk about not just about diversity, when we talk about just cultural diversity, there are four main pillars: your ethnic background, your country of birth and your ancestors, the language you speak, and the worldviews that you believe in, no matter theist or atheist. These are the main, and then followed by a demographic information about age, gender, sexuality, education level, racial background, ability or disability. And that's how you provide a picture around your diversity. It's like a 4K high definition TV. The more pixels you have, the clearer picture you have about your diversity around your team. And surprisingly, we do not collect that. And think about other aspects, like when you go to the pillar of people's beliefs, in the Australian census, we put we acknowledge the diversity between like Catholic and Orthodox people, for example, and then we put all Buddhist people, Muslim people, or Hindu people in one group. The diversity just among like Muslims or Buddhist people is incredible. I mean, you have to acknowledge that diversity. Without that, you can't. Or you go some other countries. In Norway, you can't ask about people's sexuality. We always gain more by knowing each other rather than not knowing each other. So how come you don't ask that simple question? In many countries, the census, when they ask about gender, they don't respect the gender identity. They just give you are you male or female. You have no other choice. I mean, come on, we live in 2021. It's a different world.
Exactly. And I love that phrase that you use about knowing each other. I think that's commonly what I talk to when I talk to clients who are having concerns about asking this type of data, and that their staff will push back and won't be happy answering them. My response is it's in their best interest that we know that information. so that we can provide an environment that is inclusive of them and we can understand what their lived experience is. And I think too often there's too many perhaps HR people, people in leadership roles who are just too scared to go there for some reason in Australia. And I'm glad that you've brought that global context into it, because I have less experience there. But they just seem too frightened to step over that and get the question wrong, or perhaps they're worried about what answers they're going to get. I'm not entirely sure, but there's a lot of fear around working in this space and asking these extra questions. And I like how you point out those 4 dimensions, because too often we know we're collecting country of birth and perhaps we're asking whether people have English as a second language, but usually that's the end of it. And those questions are always optional and always incomplete when we actually look at the data that organisations have. Can you maybe talk to the power of having that more rich understanding of people's ethnicity and their cultural backgrounds in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, when you have the data, you can make more confident decisions. A data-driven approach, how can I say, always utilizes of a fact-based approach to diversity. And when you put a measurable setting, a measurable KPI or goal in your team, you always have a goal. You know that I'm going to reach that goal. But the importance of collecting all this information is because diversity is like a Rubik's cube. When you do the Rubik's cube, it has different aspects, different like faces. You can't say that I'm going to fix the red side and then I'm going to fix the blue side and then I'm going to fix the like green side. It doesn't work like that. You have to solve this big puzzle with a holistic view and just solve it. You can't go, I'm going to focus on gender balance this year, and next year I'm going to do the language things, and the other year I'm going to do the ethnic background. It doesn't work like that. It simply doesn't work like that. So and diversity in general is a wonderful, fantastic Rubik's cube. Actually, it has more than 6. It has so many faces. Yeah, but how can we understand about each other without knowing who we are? So we did a survey last year with more than 1,000 people participate in that survey, talking about, out of these 4 pillars of just cultural diversity, which one do you think is more important? Because the value that you put for ethnic backgrounds, it might be bolder than linguistic backgrounds or the religion. Yeah. So some countries are more religious. Some countries are more like the ethnicity is more important. And in Australia, most people said that the ethnic backgrounds that you're coming from is like 60% importance of your diversity. I don't care what religion you believe in, but it's really important for me that what ethnic background you're coming from. This is how I see you as a diverse person. I mean, I'm working with some people for the last 6 years. I don't know what religion they believe in, but we always talk about the amazing stories of the ethnic backgrounds. However, in some countries, they define themselves by their religion. I mean, you go to like some Middle Eastern countries, they see themselves first Muslim, then, for example, a Pakistani or Arab people. But if you go to a secular country such as like Australia or France, they see them, they introduce themselves by their ethnicity. I'm French or I'm Australian. Then they say that what language they speak or what country they were born or what worldview they follow or practice. So this is the most aspect of a cultural diversity in general, and then you not ask that question.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's a really good insight, and I absolutely love your Rubik's Cube analogy. And I was just having this conversation recently where somebody was saying that that they needed to start with the women first, and if they did that, then next year they would put their priority into their disability action plan. And this is still such a common approach for organisations. I understand why. I think it feels easier to do one thing at a time. But what you see is that pretty much every organisation chooses to do gender equity first. And they do that quite often without an intersectional lens. So they're not looking beyond gender. And I think that just, number one, causes them a hell of a lot more work because, and I know from your engineering background, you'll have the same mindset of me, and it's around efficiency. And it is not efficient to focus on equity groups as opposed to diversity and inclusion as a whole, because you're going to look at recruitment. And while you're looking at recruitment for women, why aren't you looking at recruitment for people with disability or people from different ethnic backgrounds? It just makes zero sense to me how that is, how I guess the waste of resource and effort when you separate people out by equity group and approach the work that way.
Yeah, that's true. Bree, what always mesmerizes me is the patterns of data, when you see the patterns of data. So working in the field of diversity and collecting data, especially with the team that I work currently, Diversity Atlas, I'm seeing the pattern of data across many different organizations. And I just put that as an assumption, which needs more research to be done. And the thing that I saw in many organizations is that those companies who acknowledge diversity in general, they have gender balance as a result. They get that. They reach gender balance. But those companies who start just focusing on gender balance, they do not tick other boxes. And I see that almost everywhere. So those companies who are more inclusive to peoples with various ability or disability, sexuality, gender, culture, religion, etc., they have gender balance by default. I mean, they don't need to they don't need to put any other strategies there. It's just there. Just enjoy it. It's there. You don't need to do anything. And I see that almost everywhere. So I mean, I still can't say that it is because it needs more research, but I mean, it makes sense. I'll have a more inclusive organization, then here we go.
Exactly. It's gonna drive equality across any kind of sphere when you start actually looking at the organization holistically in terms of how do we create an inclusive environment. Yeah, that does make perfect sense. I wonder too also though, for those organisations that are mature enough where they are looking at inclusion more broadly, do they already have some level of gender diversity to begin with that helps them make those decisions to go down that path? I'm not sure. It's fascinating, and it would be fascinating seeing the trends that you do see across organisations. And I know I've seen some fantastic articles from your CEO Peter around some of the insights that you have because of the data that you collect. So tell us a little bit about what you do with organizations. What is this tool, Diversity Atlas, that you use?
So Diversity Atlas is an instance diversity mapping / analytics. So it's now almost 6 years of research and development. But it's been recently outside, so it's like a hot, fresh baked croissant just been out of the oven just recently to the market. But yeah, so we go to organizations, and the job that they used to take like month and month of analysis through spreadsheets, we just do that instantly. So we go to organizations, we run a survey which takes about 3 to 4 minutes, and then we convert that data into knowledge and insight for that organization with tens of dashboards and key facts which can help organizations to design strategies, to put action plans around their team, to put goals, and to measure and benchmark their diversity and inclusion over time. They can see how they're improving. They can see their gaps. some organizations have gender balance, but diversity is not just variety. One aspect of diversity is balance. What if I put all females as line managers and still on senior manager still have male? The company might still look like gender balance, but it's not, because it's not balance. Or you might recruit a larger number of younger females, for example, and a larger number of older females. So, however, the company might be gender balanced, but it's not gender versus age balance. And all these patterns which shape that Rubik cube. So we map these information there, which makes life easier for D&I practitioner and HR people. I mean, my hope is in the next 10 years, all diversity and inclusion practitioners become data scientists or data analysts in the next 10 years, not to see the data, to be able to see beyond the data.
Yeah, oh, I love it. Absolutely. I'm on that path for sure. I think it's just such an important and integral part of the role of a diversity and inclusion professional is to be able to, as you say, just understand data, but understand what sits underneath that, to be able to look deeper. And I do think there's a lot of failings with some existing diversity and inclusion surveys that are perhaps produced on a large scale, is that they don't really ask the questions that delve that deep, that allow somebody to delve into the issues at a deeper level. Does your tool, you collect the diversity information, does it ask questions around how people feel? Is it a qualitative tool in that sense as well, to get a sense of where the inclusion of the organisation sits, or is it really focused on that diversity piece?
Yeah, just before answering that question, the Diversity Atlas has a comprehensive database of ethno-linguistic record databases behind that. So we have a database of 9,700 languages, including 350 Australian Aboriginal languages, 50 plus American First Nations, and so many ethnic languages. Like if you go to Australian census, you just say, do you speak Aboriginal language? But I mean, it's so much diverse. You can't just ask Aboriginal language. The Aboriginal people in this land and that land, they speak many different ways. And also we have a database of 8,500 plus ethnic backgrounds, and also a list of 8,000 plus religions, branches, and denominations. That's how people identify themselves. And all these details, how can I say, provide that high definition picture of our diversity. The base of this this beautiful picture is starting with diversity, cultural and demographic diversity, followed by intersectional analysis. But then the organizations have the option to attach or add their own surveys to that. So if you have an engagement survey, or what is trendy these days is an ENPS survey, you just ask it one simple questions. How much do you like your organizations, rated from 1 to 10? And that simple number says a lot. That just says a lot. And you can put that one in the diversity atlas, and then you see how people think about that. The other feature is it's not about how to collect the data. I mean, people may feel not safe when they've been asked such personal questions. It's really important to ensure your audience, your staff, about confidentiality, integrity of the information that you collect. So, when people using Diversity Atlas, the information will be kept anonymously. So either they have the option to be fully anonymous, or they skip certain specific questions. Like if someone's not feeling confident about talking about their disability or their religion, they have the option to skip that question. And skipping that question is still a valuable information. Imagine that you do this survey in a company where 60% of the people do not want to talk about their sexual identity. That number itself says a lot. I'm not feeling safe. It's not an inclusive etc., etc., etc. And that's important. And I don't see that as a negative thing. I see that as a gap that I can improve. This is the area that me as an organization can improve. This is how people around me are feeling here, and that's important.
That's a really good point. And I have that question constantly. Will people feel confident? We haven't quite built a level of trust with our staff yet to ask those questions. And I agree. My answer is always as well, make sure there's a prefer not to say. And the information in that prefer not to say is just as valuable as if they select yes or no.
Yeah.
You can see Sorry?
You also want to share another story is when you're collecting the data, share your emerging results with your audience. It's very powerful. Like last year I was presenting at FECA, and there was like about 800 people around the conference. I mean, presenting there. And they send out the survey beforehand, and in an unfocused target group, about 10% of the people registered it. But what we did, we put a screen, we showed the live results of who we are in this room, and then immediately people say that, oh, is that things? I see, that's a beautiful map of our diversity. I want to say that I also exist in this cohort. I'm a Polish background, I'm a Jewish, I'm with a physical disability, I'm with a vision disability. I want to say that I exist here. So as soon as people see the diversity around the room, they want to express their existence as well. And that picture becomes more, that puzzle becomes more and more beautiful. And that's when you have the instant analytic platform. And then you see you're going to see the hidden level of diversity with your team, which you never understood. I mean, the first time that we did the diversity atlas in the team, someone put in the information that she speaks 8 languages. And we don't know if it's, who is that, because it's anonymous. And in our next team gathering, they asked, so someone put that one, are they feeling confident to share their story? And one of our staff who had a background in Ghana, she said, yeah, that was me. I speak 8 languages. But I mean, 3 of them is just dialect, do not have writing. But she said, everyone in Ghana speaks like at least 5 languages. And that's amazing. That's just amazing.
Yeah, that is so true. And regardless, I think, whether you're using the Diversity Atlas tool or your own or somebody else's inclusion and diversity survey, you do see over time that people build confidence and feel like they will share more about themselves, because I saw that the first one, as long as you do it right, so if they see action from the first one, and as you say, if they get to see the outcomes of the survey and the research, then they go, yeah, I'm happy to be in that, and I'd like you to address the issues that I have. And so then they'll feel much more comfortable putting their information in the next year that you do it. So I think that's a great message for organizations, is that start somewhere. And if you do get a very large proportion of your staff just prefer not to say, then it's your job to spend the next 12 months building that trust and confidence, so that next time you run that survey, they actually tick some other boxes for you. This has been a fascinating conversation. Obviously, I want to say I actually myself haven't personally seen the Diversity Atlas tool, so I'm not in any way endorsing the tool, but I'm certainly endorsing the conversation that we've had and the information that you've shared with us. So thank you so much for doing that, Rezza. And I believe there's some big exciting things happening for cultural infusion in the next few months. So I think Peter, your CEO, has agreed to come on after all that happens, and we can talk a bit more about some of the great things that you're doing. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me here, Bree.
That's totally my privilege and my pleasure. And for those, we did have a little issue with LinkedIn. You may have missed, if you've been watching on LinkedIn, you may have missed the start of this. And so you'll be able to, I think, go and just re-watch it, and it should re-watch from the start. But if not, I will be uploading this to YouTube as always this afternoon, and it will then have some edited captions on it sometime after that. So please, if you do jump over to YouTube, hit subscribe, and then you'll get these every week, and you won't miss one. Thanks everyone again for tuning in, and I will be back the same time next week.
Thank you.
Thanks.